Welcome back to the Truth About Utilization Management, what every nurse needs to know, presented by Healthcare Nurses Network and Nurses Link Up. We've explored utilization management from the bedside, through documentation, collaboration, discharge planning, denial prevention, and the manager's role. Now, in Episode 7, we elevate the perspective to strategic leadership, the CNO's role in utilization management. Chief nursing officers sit at a critical junction, balancing patient care excellence with financial stewardship. While controlling costs is vital, are you truly harnessing the power of your entire nursing staff to drive proactive, effective utilization management? Dr. Nicolas Abella's 7th article challenges leaders to move beyond traditional top-down models. James and Emily are ready to discuss his insights on building a truly nurse-centric system, one that empowers nurses, leverages their expertise, and ultimately strengthens both patient outcomes and the hospital's bottom line. Discover the strategies CNOs can use to transform utilization management within their organizations. Here are your hosts, James Carter and Emily Ramirez.
Welcome back to the Healthcare Nurses Network podcast, where we're all about helping nurses like you thrive in your careers.
Yeah.
Today, we're deep into a topic that's close to every nurse leader's heart, utilization management.
Right.
Specifically, we're exploring a revolutionary approach,
Okay.
a nurse-centric system.
Interesting.
And we'll be drawing insights from Dr. Nicolas Abella's article, CNO's Role in Utilization Management, Building a Nurse-Centric System.
What's fascinating about this approach is that it really flips the script on the traditional top-down models that often leave nurses feeling frustrated and unheard.
You know, it's like we're constantly told that nurses are the backbone of healthcare.
Yeah.
But when it comes to utilization management, it often feels like our expertise is overlooked.
Exactly. And that's where traditional models often fall short. They create this disconnect between administrators focused on the bottom line and the nurses who are actually at the bedside providing patient care.
So instead of having a system that supports nurses in making informed decisions, we end up with policies that don't reflect the realities of patient care.
Right. And the result is that nurses often feel like they're just policy enforcers instead of patient advocates.
Right.
And this can lead to a whole host of problems, including ethical dilemmas, burnout, and a lack of buy-in from nurses.
And let's be honest, when nurses are burnt out and feeling undervalued, it impacts the quality of care they can provide.
Absolutely. And Dr. Abella's research really highlights the negative impact of traditional utilization management practices on both nurses and patients.
Right.
For instance, he cites a 2024 study by Struthers and colleagues that found a direct link between these practices and increased nurse burnout.
That's disheartening, but unfortunately not surprising.
Yeah.
But what I find really exciting about Dr. Abella's work is that he offers a clear path forward,
Okay.
a way to build a system that actually empowers nurses.
And that's where this concept of a nurse-centric system comes in.
Right.
It's about recognizing that nurses are not just task doers, but skilled clinicians with invaluable insights into patient needs and how resources can be best utilized.
So instead of just following protocols, nurses are empowered to use their critical thinking skills and clinical judgment to make informed decisions about patient care.
Precisely. And Dr. Abella gives some compelling examples of what this looks like in practice. For instance, he suggests that CNOs can champion policy changes that require nursing representation on all utilization management committees.
Oh, wow.
This ensures that nurses have a voice in shaping policies from the very beginning.
That's a fantastic idea, and it sends a strong message that nursing expertise is valued.
Right.
What about at the nurse manager level?
Yeah.
How can they contribute to this shift?
Well, nurse managers can play a critical role in fostering a culture of collaboration and open communication.
Oh.
Dr. Abella suggests that they can lead interdisciplinary rounds, where nurses, physicians, and case managers work together to make patient-centered decisions.
That sounds like a much more effective way to approach utilization management than the siloed approach we often see in traditional models.
Absolutely, and this is where I think it's important to emphasize that this shift to a nurse-centric system isn't just about warm and fuzzy feelings.
Okay.
It's also about improving efficiency and optimizing resources.
Right. Because when nurses are empowered to make informed decisions at the point of care, it can actually prevent unnecessary delays, reduce readmissions, and ultimately save the hospital money.
Exactly. And Dr. Abella highlights a 2023 case study by Tony Healthcare that demonstrated the significant financial benefits of a nurse-centric utilization management model.
That's a powerful piece of evidence that CNOs can use to advocate for this change within their organizations.
Absolutely. And speaking of resources, I want to remind our listeners that you can find a wealth of information and support for building a more nurse-centric approach to utilization management on healthcarenurses.net.
Yes, definitely check that out.
Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this model actually works. One of the things that really struck me in Dr. Abella's article was his emphasis on investing in nurses, not just technology.
That's such an important point.
It is.
It's easy to get caught up in the latest and greatest technology.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's the nurses who are the heart and soul of patient care.
And that's why Dr. Abella stresses the importance of investing in comprehensive utilization management training
Okay.
for nurses at all levels, from the bedside to the CNO suite.
He actually provides a specific example
He does.
of how CNOs can advocate for budget allocation to support specialized utilization management certification programs for nurses.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's great.
And nurse managers can play a key role by dedicating time for ongoing professional development in this area.
Absolutely.
This empowers nurses to truly understand the ins and outs of utilization management and become confident advocates for their patients.
It does.
So we're not just talking about giving nurses a new checklist or a fancy app.
No.
We're talking about equipping them with the knowledge and skills they need to thrive in this new model.
Exactly. And speaking of thriving, let's talk about the impact of this nurse-centric approach on communication and collaboration within the hospital.
One of the biggest complaints I hear from nurses about traditional utilization management models
Yeah.
is that it feels like they're operating in a silo,
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from physicians, case managers, and even the utilization management department itself.
And that disconnect can lead to misunderstandings, delays in care, and ultimately frustration for everyone involved.
But in a nurse-centric model, communication is key.
It is.
Dr. Abella really emphasizes the importance of breaking down those silos and fostering a culture of transparency and collaboration.
He gives some really concrete examples of how CNOs and nurse managers can facilitate this.
Okay.
For instance, CNOs can implement regular town hall meetings, specifically focused on utilization management challenges and opportunities.
That's a great way to get direct feedback from nurses on the front lines
Yes.
and ensure that their voices are heard.
And nurse managers can create that same open and collaborative environment at the unit level, encouraging nurses to share their insights and concerns.
This kind of open dialogue is so crucial, not just for improving utilization management processes, but for building trust and mutual respect among all members of the healthcare team.
Absolutely. And when you have that foundation of trust and respect, it creates a much more positive and supportive environment for everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about the downsides of traditional models, the core principles of a nurse-centric approach, and the importance of investing in nurses and fostering open communication.
Right.
But how do we actually put this all into practice?
Yeah.
What are the tangible steps that CNOs can take to build this system?
Well, that's where Dr. Abella's Nurse-Centric Utilization Management Implementation Guide comes in.
Okay.
It's a fantastic resource that outlines a clear roadmap for implementation, and you can download it for free on healthcarenurses.net.
That's such a valuable resource for CNOs who are ready to embrace this new model. What are some of the key strategies he outlines in the guide?
One of the first steps he recommends is forming a nurse-led steering committee.
Okay.
This committee would be responsible for overseeing the development and implementation of the entire nurse-centric utilization management program.
So nurses are driving the change from the very beginning. I love that.
Yes.
What else is essential for successful implementation?
Well, having clear policies and procedures is crucial.
Right.
And it's not enough to just have policies. They need to be written in a way that nurses can easily understand and apply in their daily practice.
It's about making utilization management an integrated part of the nursing workflow, not just an extra burden.
Right. And of course, we can't forget about training.
Yeah.
Nurses need comprehensive training on everything from medical necessity criteria to documentation best practices to effective communication strategies for advocating for their patients.
And this training needs to be ongoing, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just a one-time thing.
Healthcare is constantly evolving, and utilization management practices are no exception.
Nurses need to have access to ongoing professional development opportunities to stay up to date and confident in their roles.
This is all about empowering nurses to be the best advocates they can be for their patients.
It is.
But even with the best training and the most supportive policies in place, we know that CNOs often face challenges when trying to implement change within their organizations.
That's absolutely true. There can be budget constraints, resistance from physicians who are used to a more physician-centric model, and even limitations with existing EHR systems.
So how can CNOs overcome these obstacles and successfully champion this new approach to utilization management?
Well, that's a great question, and it's something we'll dive into in more detail after a quick break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Healthcare Nurses Network podcast. Before the break, we were discussing the exciting possibilities of a nurse-centric utilization management system and some of the hurdles CNOs might face
Right.
in implementing this new model.
Yeah.
So let's tackle those challenges head on.
Okay, the first challenge you mentioned, budget constraints, is a common one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to frame this as an investment, not an expense.
Right, because when you invest in nurses and empower them to make informed decisions, you can actually see a positive return on that investment.
Exactly. And Dr. Abella's article highlights a 2023 case study by Tony Healthcare that demonstrated this beautifully. They found that a nurse-centric utilization management approach actually led to significant cost savings through reduced denials, fewer readmissions, and improved overall efficiency.
So CNOs can actually make a strong financial case for this model.
Yeah.
It's not just about improving patient care, it's also about being fiscally responsible.
Precisely. Now, the second challenge you mentioned, navigating a physician-centric culture, can be a bit trickier.
It's understandable that some physicians might be resistant to a model that shifts some decision-making power to nurses.
Of course, and that's why it's crucial to approach this with a spirit of collaboration and mutual respect.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Abella emphasizes the importance of building strong relationships between nurses and physicians and demonstrating how this new approach benefits everyone involved.
So it's not about nurses taking over, but rather about working together as a team to achieve the best possible outcomes for patients.
Exactly. And there's actually a 2020 study by Buljak-Samardzik and colleagues that supports this collaborative approach. They found that when nurses and physicians work together effectively, it leads to better clinical decisions and improved patient care overall.
That makes perfect sense. So it's about highlighting the win-win for both nurses and physicians. Now, the third challenge you mentioned, EHR limitations, can feel a bit daunting.
It's true that many existing EHR systems weren't designed with a nurse-centric utilization management model in mind.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we can't adapt and advocate for the changes we need.
So how can CNOs be effective advocates in this area?
Dr. Abella suggests that CNOs need to be persistent and data-driven in their approach.
So it's about gathering concrete evidence of how current EHR limitations are hindering efficient utilization management practices.
Exactly. For example, a CNO could track the amount of time nurses are spending on workarounds due to EHR limitations or the number of errors that occur because the system doesn't support their workflow. Then they can present this data to IT departments and hospital administration as a compelling case for system updates or modifications.
That's a really smart strategy. It's about using data to tell the story of how these limitations are impacting both nurses and patients.
Exactly. And it's about being a relentless champion for this new model, demonstrating its value at every level of the hospital hierarchy.
So we've addressed some of the common challenges, but let's go back to the core of this nurse-centric approach. It's about recognizing nurses as expert clinicians with invaluable insights into patient care, right?
Absolutely. And that recognition needs to translate into concrete actions that empower nurses to utilize their expertise within the utilization management framework.
One area where this is particularly important is in patient advocacy. We know that nurses are often the first line of defense when it comes to advocating for their patients' needs, especially when navigating complex utilization management processes.
And that's why Dr. Abella stresses the importance of equipping nurses with the tools and support they need to be effective patient champions. He suggests that CNOs can start by developing clear policies that outline how nurses can challenge denials and advocate for their patients.
So it's about giving nurses the authority to push back when they believe a decision is not in their patient's best interest.
Exactly. And it's about providing them with training on effective advocacy strategies, such as gathering evidence, presenting their case clearly and persuasively, and navigating the appeals process.
That's so important. Nurses need to feel confident and supported when they're advocating for their patients. It can be intimidating to challenge a denial, especially if they feel like they're going up against the system.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
that's where the role of the nurse manager becomes crucial. They can provide coaching and mentorship to their nurses, helping them develop their advocacy skills and empowering them to speak up for their patients.
It's about creating a culture where nurses feel comfortable and supported in their role as patient advocates.
Exactly. And this shift in mindset is not just beneficial for nurses and patients, but also for the hospital as a whole. When you have nurses who are empowered to advocate effectively for their patients, it can lead to better care coordination, fewer unnecessary delays and denials, and ultimately improved patient outcomes.
And improved patient outcomes are what we're all striving for, right?
Absolutely. Now, I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier, the importance of investing in nurses. This isn't just about providing training, it's also about creating a work environment that values and respects nurses' expertise.
And one way to demonstrate that respect is through transparency and data sharing.
That's a great point. Dr. Abella highlights the importance of using utilization management data not to punish nurses, but to empower them.
So instead of using data to point fingers or identify individual shortcomings, it's about using it to identify trends areas for improvement and opportunities for growth.
Exactly. And this data needs to be shared with nurses in a transparent and accessible way.
So they can see how their individual efforts contribute to the overall success of the utilization management program.
Precisely. And Dr. Abella suggests that CNOs can implement systems for sharing unit-level utilization management data with nurses on a regular basis. This helps nurses understand the big picture and see how their work fits in.
And nurse managers can facilitate discussions around this data at the unit level, brainstorming strategies for improvement and celebrating successes together.
That's a great example of how data can be used to foster collaboration and empower nurses rather than create a culture of fear or blame.
This all sounds really promising, but I'm sure some CNOs are still wondering, where do I even begin?
That's understandable. Implementing a system-wide change like this can feel overwhelming. But remember, Dr. Abella offers a practical roadmap in his Nurse-Centric Utilization Management Implementation Guide, which you can download for free on healthcarenurses.net.
That's such a valuable resource. It provides step-by-step guidance and concrete strategies for CNOs who are ready to embrace this new model.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of celebrating successes along the way. Recognizing and rewarding nurses who excel in utilization management reinforces its importance and motivates others to embrace this new approach.
So it's not just about focusing on the challenges, but also about acknowledging and celebrating the wins.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great message to end on. A nurse-centric utilization management model is not just about fixing problems. It's about creating a more positive, supportive, and effective healthcare system for everyone.
I love that. So as we wrap up into this topic, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that nurses are uniquely positioned to play a leading role in utilization management. They have the clinical expertise, the patient-centered perspective, and the passion to make a real difference in this area.
And when we empower nurses to utilize their expertise and advocate for their patients, everyone benefits: patients, nurses, physicians, and the hospital as a whole.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to go it alone. Dr. Abella's Nurse-Centric Utilization Management Implementation Guide is a fantastic resource, and you can find it along with other helpful information on healthcarenurses.net.
So I encourage all of our listeners to check out those resources and start thinking about how you can champion this new model within your own organizations.
And remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
That's a great reminder. Well, it's been a truly insightful conversation. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on the Healthcare Nurses Network podcast. We'll be back next time with another into a topic that's relevant to your nursing career. Welcome back to the Healthcare Nurses Network podcast. We've been on quite a journey exploring this idea of a nurse-centric utilization management system.
Yeah, it's been inspiring to hear about the positive impact this model can have on nurses, patients, and the entire healthcare system.
And as we've discussed, it's not just about shifting responsibilities. It's about fundamentally changing the way we think about utilization management.
Right.
It's about empowering nurses to be leaders, advocates, and decision makers.
And it's about creating a culture of collaboration and transparency where everyone feels valued and respected.
You know, one thing that keeps coming up in my mind is this idea of legacy. What kind of legacy do we want to leave as healthcare leaders?
Oh, that's such a powerful question.
Yeah.
Do we want to be remembered for simply maintaining the status quo, or do we want to be known for championing a new era of healthcare?
Right.
One that truly empowers nurses to provide the best possible care.
I think for most of us, the answer is clear. We want to be part of the solution. part of the movement that transforms healthcare for the better.
And the beauty of this nurse-centric utilization management model is that it's not just a theoretical concept, it's a practical roadmap for achieving that transformation.
And Dr. Abella's Nurse-Centric Utilization Management Implementation Guide provides clear, actionable steps that CNOs can take to build this system within their organizations.
Right, and remember, you can download that guide for free on healthcarenurses.net.
So if you're a CNO who's feeling inspired and ready to make a difference, I encourage you to take that first step. Download the guides, start a conversation with your team, and begin building a healthcare system that truly values and empowers nurses.
And don't be afraid to reach out for support. There are countless resources available, and there's a growing community of nurse leaders who are passionate about making this vision a reality.
That's a great reminder. We're all in this together, and together we can create a healthcare system that's more efficient, more effective, and more patient-centered.
And ultimately, that's what it's all about, providing the best possible care for our patients and empowering nurses to be the incredible healers they are.
Well, thank you for joining us on this Into the World of Nurse-Centric Utilization Management.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for being part of the Healthcare Nurses Network community. We're here to support you on your journey to thriving in your nursing career. We'll be back next time with more insights, strategies, and real-world solutions to help you make a difference in healthcare.